Hey everyone, welcome to Insider Movies October edition, season 2. We have made it and I'm so glad to have you with me. This is Book of Katherine and we are going to be doing a full month of Halloween movies. We are going to be doing 4 categories. We are going to be doing classic movies that you need to know if you're going to be working in Hollywood industry. We're going to be doing family movies that you need to know. And if you are wanting to show your kids anything, but also they are good for the whole family, ages 5 to 50, we're going to be doing suspense movies, and then we're also going to be doing scary/horror movies. So if you were with us last year, get ready. We are going to be doing a whole new series. The only difference between this year and last year is number 1, I'm going to be wearing a less scary costuming I'm going to be wearing my vintage clothing. So I'm just going to be going a little bit crazy on vintage like I did for episode 4 last year. I'm just going to be going vintage. I'm not going to be going so Halloween-y. So as to not scare the kids, we're going to be doing that. So I do not have a good health. So when I wear the Halloween stuff, it just doesn't look so good. So we're going to be wearing vintage for me. So you guys can go crazy with your Halloween costumes, but for me, this is what we're going to wear. So I'm wearing a little bit of vintage for you guys. And the second thing is that last year I was able to do a lot of editing and being able to put up things on the screen for you and things like that. And it would take me hours and hours and hours of editing and things like that. And I can't do that with my health. My health is pretty bad. For those of you guys who are new, my health is not good. And so I have learned, in order to get videos up for you and things like that, I can't do things like that. In order to get videos up for my health, just to balance out health and lifestyle and things like that, I have to just film the videos for you and pop them up without editing. That's the only way I can balance out and the pain and everything like that. So it will just be like this without any beautiful pictures and stuff, and I'm really sorry about that. But at least you'll be able to get season 2. Last year I wasn't sure I would be able to get a season 2, and we have a season 2 because I've made changes like that to my channel. So it will be graphics free, but it will not be movie free. So we are going to have a wonderful time. So let's get on. If you haven't seen the introduction, you can see right here my introduction to Insider Movies October season 2, and let's get started. So week 1, as you know, last year, if you've seen last year's, we build. So this will be week 1. We'll do week 2, week 3, week 4, and we build. So we kind of build up. So also, I am not a big scary movie buff. I'm so sorry. I'm not into Halloween movies. And so I have a group of insiders in Hollywood industry. And when it comes to Halloween movies, I work with my Hollywood insiders. There's a group of them that are really, really into Halloween movies. And so this is the one list where I actually work with them on movies. Like all my insider movies are movies that I picked, and I call, like, if you see my insider movies list, I pick them, I choose those movies, not for Halloween, not when it comes to October movie series. This is the series where I have to work with my insiders and I have to go through them and pick out movies with them. And so this movie list is actually cultivated by them. They have gone through it, they've picked through it, and so they've chosen the movies. And we've actually picked which week and what we're going to be doing. And so we move on up through there. So, October is always a hard month for me because then I have to watch these movies with them. I'm not a big Halloween movie, and that's because one of the movies we're going to talk about this week, I actually saw when I was a very small child, and it just got me off of movies. It got me off of scary movies at a very young age, and I'll go through that when we get to it. So, but let us get started on the movies. Yay! Season 2 is here, and we're going to get started. So, and then we will build. So let's go ahead and start with the family movie. So this is a little bit different. Not what I said, we're going to build. So, but we were going through, remember, these are movies that you need to know if you're going to be in Hollywood. We choose them as movies that you have to know if you're going to be in Hollywood, that you have to know. So these are going to be very quality films that they don't talk about anymore, but they expect you to know them, right? They expect you to know these movies, even though they don't talk about them anymore. They mention them in articles, they mention them in reviews, and directors talk about them. They reference them, they joke about them, ha ha ha. And you'll hear them in monologues. Like you'll hear in passing, once you know these movies, you'll be surprised about how often you hear these movies mentioned in passing in monologues on late night shows and stuff like that. And you'll see them in articles and like the New Yorker and stuff. So they're movies that you need to know, but they never tell you, like in film school and stuff like that, they never tell you, by the way, you need to see these films. They've kind of forgotten that they need to be taught. The culture has changed so much. So the family movie we're going to be doing is Fantasia. And you would say maybe, and that's a Walt Disney film, Fantasia. And it is an incredible, incredible film. It is not a normal Disney film. It is not a normal Disney film at all. And it was a shock for a lot of Disney fans. And you have to remember, Walt, it was made in 1940. And I believe it was like 1935 when Snow White came out. And it was such a huge success. It was just it was like the first animated film. It's such a huge success and things like that. And, Mickey Mouse was already such a worldwide success, and he was just building so fast, but he was such an artist. Walt Disney was such an artist, and he had such an amazing team of animators that they had this huge genre. Suddenly they were able to play in movie theaters, and they got really excited, and they made this masterpiece called Fantasia. And you might be like, well, it's not exactly a Halloween film, except for one of the scenes that happens I believe it's Night on Bald Mountain, and that qualifies it. And it is a classic. It's referred to when it comes to Halloween, that it is so scary. He did such a great job with it. And so the way it's this story that builds and builds and builds and builds. And that's kind of the culmination that it builds to, is that Night of Bald Mountain and this huge, powerful, almost demon that comes out and rules. And then it falls into this beautiful, actually, I believe it's Ave Maria. And he goes back into his mountain. I can't begin to describe the classic filmmaking that is, the genius behind it. There is a huge build coming up to it, the power behind it, the fear. What Fantasia is, for those of you that don't know, and it was kind of like everybody got built. They were like, oh, Disney's doing another film. Disney's doing another film. And they all got dressed up. Hollywood got all dressed up and then they were like, what the heck is this? It was kind of a flop when it came out. Everybody was like, what the heck? And what he did is he took these symphonies, he took these grand masterpieces, and they let the animators kind of just animate to these masterpieces, like let them just free. Because they had, and I understand as a creative myself, like I understand when you get the excitement and the ability of like, oh my gosh, we have the ability to show on movie theaters. If we have the ability to show on movie screens for the first time, and this movie theater thing is happening, and you have these big movie screens, and it's successful, and Snow White worked, and all these things, you want to grow as an artist. You want to grow. What's the next step after you do the grand animation? What's the next step? And you can see that the next step for them would be to like meld, the best, to move on almost from children's stories. They started with Steamboat Willie, and then they move on to, Hans Christian Andersen. What's the next step? And you can kind of see them wanting to go towards the next thing, which is symphonies, and the next higher level, and then see what they came up with and just create. And what they did, they did a pastoral scene, and they still use like animals, They still used animals and things like that. It's almost like they did this whole creation scene of like, someone said, I was listening to this thing online, someone said they believed it was their creation of Disney, how they created the creation of their world of Disney, of like the world of Disney. It was like an animated world of like how the world of Disney came to be. And like their evil characters and their good characters. And it was like how all of their animals came to life, because in Disney classics, like their animals like are able to like they have emotions and things like that, like Lady and the Tramp and things like that. And it was like how they came to be. And so but Night on Bald Mountain, like it is truly, I don't know how they did it, but it is a truly, you know, shaking piece. And it is kind of known, it's referenced all the time when Halloween comes around. And so is The Sorcerer's Apprentice. It's always referenced, Mickey's Sorcerer's Apprentice. It's always, that's why I have it on the thumbnail for this piece, is The Sorcerer's Apprentice. It's always referenced. And it's really funny because today, because of what's happened with IG Farben and Bear and the left and what they've done of trying to take down Western culture, you have to understand that the PC culture, what they're trying to undo is everything in Western culture, the other cultures from outside. They're trying to take down Western culture, and they did it by starting with Christmas, because it's a linchpin of Western culture. And then they started to take down all these little pieces, like now they take down Valentine's Day. That's not okay in Western culture. And fathers and daughters dances. That's not okay in Western culture. All these little pieces, just slowly over time, every little piece of Western culture is suddenly taboo. And what they say is, you know, we're taking it out, because they always give an excuse. They always use tolerance or acceptance as an excuse. But right now in Hungary, literally, because of their policies, they have the lowest rate of hate crimes of all the countries in the EU. And the Human Rights Council is suing them, even though they have the lowest rates of human rights abuses in the EU, right? And they see that as a success, but the Human Rights Council is suing them over their lack of tolerance. And they're like, but we have the most tolerant society. We have the least rate of hate crimes. Our anti-Semitism rates are the lowest in the EU right now. Like our anti-Semitism rates are the lowest in the EU. Like anti-Semitism crimes have skyrocketed. And what people don't understand is that not all countries in the world, because the news doesn't show us that, not all countries in the world are tolerant societies. Like, you know, you can be killed for being a Christian in India. You're killed for being a Christian in China. You put in a concentration camp in China for being Falun Gong, for being Jewish, for being Christian. You know, most of the world is hate for others, intolerance for others. It's only Western society where we have tolerance for other, and they use that tolerance to try and get us to undo everything in Western society. They actually use that tolerance and say, if you're tolerant, then you'll undo every linchpin of Western society, right? They actually use that. They know that we're tolerant, and they say, well, if you're really tolerant, you'll do this and this. You'll let in all the intolerant cultures, and then those intolerant cultures just completely, you know, they'll do hate crimes against gay. They're running gays off the street, and they say they want to make gay marriage illegal. And we're like, you know, the poor, you know, gay communities are like, wait, but they don't publish that in the news. You know what I mean? They just, they outlaw it. And it's a really scary thing that's going on. And so you need to be aware that, you'll see with Fantasia that what they're doing is they're like symphonies and things like that. You know, they're taking those things in Western culture, and they'll tell you that, oh, symphonies were written by white men, and so take it apart. And it's interesting to me because I'm just kind of like, well, white men are actually the minority in the world. Like, if you really think about it, look at the entire world, look at a map. We're actually the minority. You know, we're not the majority in the world. In the world, we're actually the minority. So being a white person is actually the minority in the world. We're not the majority in the world. We're the minority in the world. Maybe not where we live right here, but that doesn't mean we're the, you know, worldwide, we're the minority. So it's really important to look at that. Like, there's billions and billions and billions of other cultures and other colors. Does that make sense? So just because they're white and wrote a symphony, we're supposed to be looking at the ideas and the quality of the ideas. Like that's what Western culture does, is it looks at the quality of the ideas, and these symphonies are high-end ideas. And so it's wonderful. It's wonderful to look. And so, but that's one of the things, is that that's why they don't look at these Disney things anymore. This Western culture. That's why one of these reasons they're taking these sorts of things out and sort of undoing these things. It's really, really good to go back and look at these sorts of things and study them again. And it'll be actually, what will be interesting is you'll be shocked. You'll be really shocked, because you'll be like, well, there's some nudity in this. You won't be used to it anymore, of what was okay to have in 1940, because these other cultures, because they've come in, like Iran is very proud. They believe that they have Islamified America by 37%. Well, that means modesty culture. We are not okay with showing skin anymore. Well, Fantasia will show skin. Western culture used to be okay with a woman's body. Now mothers are raising their daughters to not be okay with showing their boobs anymore. Like girls aren't supposed to be okay with having boobs anymore. That's because in other cultures in the world, girls are ashamed of having boobs. Like, so they're bringing that in. Well, Western culture, that was the whole point, is that women are free. Women are free to show their boobs, because the rest of the world isn't. Women are shamed for it, right? If you have a loose hijab, you get whipped and you get lashed for it. You can find videos in Malaysia, a woman slapped across the face because she's not wearing her hijab. 62 countries, you can get beaten for it, and jailed for it. And so in Western culture, that was we celebrated for being nude. So you're going to see a lot of things you may be uncomfortable with. If you're uncomfortable with it, it shows you how far they've come of making us cover up as women. So you really need to be aware of, it'll really help you see, because it's supposed to be for family. Like, it wasn't made, it was supposed to be for adults. Watch it. Maybe watch it first and see. It's a cartoon and it's beautiful. It's absolutely high level. The level, it's just such a high level, and it's just so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So the first one's Fantasia, and it was made in 1940 by Walt Disney. So moving on, we're going to go into classics now. Woohoo! I need a cough again, sorry. All right, so number 2 is the Blob. Oh my gosh, the Blob. Okay, this is very exciting. We're going to do the original Blob from 1958. So the Blob is what's called a classic B movie. A classic B movie. So in 1958, the Blob was like this. If you haven't heard of it, a lot of people have. Oh gosh, you may not have heard of it. The Blob is a classic B movie, which is known as like it's supposed to be a bad movie. That was the point. It was a bad movie, but it was huge. It was a massive success. Like, you would never think that it was a success, but it was a raging success, made by a really small company in Pennsylvania. But it was massive, because you have to remember, not everything was centralized in Hollywood. That was something that was forced on people. This was actually made by a little company in Pennsylvania, because America used to just be the land of opportunity. You could do whatever you want wherever you were. This was made in Pennsylvania by this little company, and it just went nuclear. It went everywhere, because back then, if it was popular, like the way they played music is they put a song on the radio and they let the people decide if they like it. It's not done that way anymore. But back then, they put a song on the radio, and your job was try to get it to be played on the radio. Then, if the people liked it, they play a song over and over, and then if people requested it, then it made it a hit, right? So your job as an artist was just to try and get someone to play it on the radio. That was it. And then you could find out if people liked it. Now, it's not that way at all. Now people choose what's going to be a hit and what's not going to be a hit. And they've actually choose certain riffs, like all the songs sound the same. They've done that on purpose. Like, all the songs sound the same. They have the same riff and everything like that, because they know you're used to it and they know it's going to be a hit. And so all the music has the same wah, wah, wah. And they do that on purpose. So they write it in because we're all used to it and they know it'll be an automatic hit. It's like an insured hit, right? So there's no creativity left, right? So when it comes to the Blob, it's like an original hit. It actually was a hit. It was shown in theaters. It became huge. And it's just about this. It was actually based on a police story that actually came out in Pennsylvania. Supposedly they thought something shiny fell in the sky, and they came there and all there was some dissolving jelly. And then nothing came of it. The nation didn't care. And I want to make a mention about that. We see things like that all the time. There are strange things in this world. There are people like, oh, this doesn't exist. Oh, this doesn't exist. Oh, this. I'm like, really? Have you been everywhere in the world? Have we been everywhere in the world? And when we see things, we are in the world of cell phones. We have seen things. I see things all the time. Visual things. We see them online. Visual proof of things now. And we just don't care. And the same thing happened with this story. Jelly came from the sky. A bunch of police came. It dissolved. And no one cared. Why? Because of the fallacy of consequences of belief. What would it mean if we believed it? It's too much. It's too, like, if we believed it, it would be too inconvenient. And so we don't. So I just think it's hysterical because I was like, oh, jelly fell from the sky and dissolved. And everyone was like, well, it's too inconvenient to believe it. So we're just not going to. So I think it's hysterical when, like, skeptics are like, well, it just can't. And I'm just kind of like, well, it's good that Randy is like, well, I don't know if it exists because I haven't seen it yet, but that's right. That's right. Just because you haven't seen it yet doesn't mean it's not around, because you've been very few places. You've been very few places, but we see stuff online all the time. You've seen big, huge things come crashing to the ground. We've seen hovering things in the sky. And we know with CGI, a lot of things can be done, but there's other things, and we just don't care. We just don't care. So this was one of the things based off of it. The Blob was based off of one of those things that in 1950s, we just didn't care. I'm like, oh, we just didn't care even back then. So, but I do want to mention something that I thought was interesting. So we all remember this movie happened in the 1950s. This is when movies changed. Now, the 1950s, this is 1958. Do you remember how I said that there was a big shift in our culture? If you look at magazines and you look at the magazine covers, and here we were going along, and we had this culture, and then the Nazis came out of Nazi Germany, and then the people who actually created the war weren't put away. The Nuremberg trials happened, but the IG Farben people were let off. And they went on to become heads of companies and heads of Hollywood. Keep that in mind. Now, how did Hollywood movies change in the 1950s? You will see how they changed in The Blob. This is a very key point of how they changed. Like, one of the things that changed in all these things, key things changed in the culture in the 1950s. Like, they're let out of IG Farben, they leave Germany, and they all move to the United States. Like, all the SS soldiers, all the heads of SS and everything like that, they all moved to the United States. All of them, all these corporations, IG Farben, they all moved to the United States. And then miraculously, all these new trends start in the movies, in magazines. Like, all of a sudden, Hustler's born. All of a sudden, the magazine Satan is born. All of a sudden, a new Bible's born. The NIV is born out of nowhere in 1954. Out of nowhere, the King James is suddenly changed. How did that happen? And gee, it's all narcissistic sayings. It's not, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. It's not, now the Lord is my shepherd, I'm good. What is it? Like, I have everything. What was it? Let me think. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. I'm boss. That's big difference. I was just like, wow, I lack nothing. I'm amazing, amazing, amazing. That's a big thing to change, right? And then another thing that changes is in movies, right? All of a sudden, and also all of a sudden televisions end up in everybody's houses, and technology, like, that's when technology stops developing. Did you notice that? We had microwaves and all these things, and then all of a sudden all this technology was changing, everyone revolutionizing, everyone starts getting cars. Remember, Industrial Revolution, everybody's lives are changing. Everyone's getting all this new technology, everything, and then boom, 1950s hit, and then all the breaks. We get microwaves, and it pretty much stops after microwaves. We have the same technology we got after microwaves. We haven't changed in technology, not one bit. No new medicine, nothing. We're getting the same freaking thing, same knee replacements, same everything. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? here's one of the things that changed in the media. So if you watch the movies up until this time, they have like Casablanca and Snow White and all these things. And what's his name? Oh, you'll know the movies. But basically, like, there is an order. Like, the older people are experienced, right? In, Citizen Kane and things like that. Like, there are older people and they're experienced and they know what they're doing, and the younger people are growing up. Everything kind of reflects how society is. The younger people are growing up, the older people are the elders, know what they're doing, and everything kind of reflects how life really is in society, right? And it just kind of, everything kind of mirrors society. Well, all of a sudden in the 1950s and the Blob, this perfectly reflects something. All of a sudden in the Blob, when the Blob comes, the older people in society are stupid and dumb and slow, and it's up to the kids to save everything. Everyone wonders what happened in this cultural revolution, how the 60s happened. Everyone wonders how the 60s happened and how the kids suddenly started wearing hippie clothing, why everyone stopped going to church out of nowhere, why all of a sudden they totally thought their parents were stupid, why this generation has a total attitude problem and everything like that. Like, where this total switch came, this rebellion came. Well, look at the movies. In the 1950s, a slew of movies came that all of a sudden portrayed kids as being smarter than all the generations after them, despite the fact that those generations survived and did like World War II, had been through the Great Depression, had totally survived like all of these things and had experienced all these things. As someone who's older and been through it all now, no one can tell, everyone knows. I'll never forget when I was a young, when I learned as a young person that I didn't know anything, I'll never forget it. It was when I was in college and I was going to a community college and I saw a sticker, because I went there for like one, whatever, so I'm not going to go into that. But I saw a sticker on this guy's, on a professor's door, and it said, hire a college student while they still know everything. And I remember feeling like my butt was totally kicked because I had to stare at that sticker every day for like a whole semester. And it was just like, hire them when they still know everything. And I was just really aware that there was a day coming when I knew nothing. And that happens every day you get older. You become aware of how much you don't know. And here came this slew of movies in the 1950s telling the kids that it was up to them to save the world because the older generation didn't know anything. Even though the older generation totally saved everyone from Hitler and Hitler's Germany, saved them from the Great Depression, totally overran them from the progressive movement. I mean, that did the Industrial Revolution, made it through immigration, like survived all these things. I mean, it's probably the most, I know those people. I still work with them. I even knew them from dance. I mean, they are probably the most enlightened, educated generation. I mean, even, who is it? Was it Dan Rather? Somebody wrote a book calling them the greatest generation. And yet all these movies came out saying, you kids are smarter than the greatest generation. Now, doesn't it make sense that Nazi Germany would come out and say, like, you kids, you're smarter than the people that just beat us. So you're going to see that in the Blob. You're going to see that in the Blob where these kids are like, oh, look at how stupid the adults are. They aren't catching on to the fact that the world is going to end. No, those older people are exactly who figured out that the world was going to end and saved everything. So that is, it's a good movie. You need to know it, but be aware of its role and how it changed things. Because you'll talk to people who were professors in the 60s. Even the guy who wrote Tragedy and Hope, he actually says it. He makes a note in it. He was a college professor, and he says thanks to his students who gave him so much crap in his classroom and questioned everything that he did. And he said that that was a new thing that students used to ask questions to professors and be like, teach me. And instead, all of a sudden the students were just challenging everything he said. And I was like, where did that come from? And then I see movies like this and I'm like, that's where it came from. You know, it wasn't like that in the time of Socrates and Plato. I really challenge you to go by Queens. I really challenge you to go by Queens and see the World's Fair and see what they did, because nothing, I think that was the pinnacle of civilization, is when you go by the World's Fair, because ever since then, the generation that came after that has thought that every generation after that has thought that they can figure it out on their own, and they've never done it because they always thought they knew better than the generations before them. But the generations before them knew they can learn from the people before them and wanted to build upon it. And now it's very, very interesting. Go to the World's Fair and read what they did. They built on the Egyptians. They built on all these civilizations that came before. But not the kids of the 60s. They're just like, oh, they're so stupid. Oh, you know nothing. And you see that today with kids today. And now they're saying the same thing to professors. And now professors today, you know, and the professors today, they have no understanding that the only reason they're professors is because they wanted to avoid the Vietnam War. They just don't get it. I can't believe the number of people who are PhDs, they won't hire or give raises to engineers because they don't have their PhDs, never remembering the only reason they have a PhD is because it was cheap and it made them survive the Vietnam War. Like, if it weren't for the Vietnam, they wouldn't have their PhDs. Like, that's the only reason they have their PhDs. They were trying to get out of the Vietnam War. And I'm just like, people don't have PhDs today because it'll put them in debt for $120K. And they can't afford that. Like, they're smart. They want to go out and earn a living. Like, what the heck? And you won't give them a raise because of that? Because they're being smart? Like, that's surviving. All right. So the next one is Silence of the Lambs. One of my favorite all-time movies. 1991. Some of the best acting I've ever seen. I remember it reintroduced me into the Halloween genre. I had just could never get into Halloween movies. And then a friend was like, I had a group of friends that they were very, very loving. They were some Jewish, it was a group of actually a bunch of different faiths, come to think of it. Well, no, the one was atheist. A couple were Jewish. One was Christian. But they were all intellectuals. It was this amazing group. And I think they're all like skeptics. And I had been raised Catholic, but I was in it because of fear, but I hated it. But I didn't really know anything about it. I would say it was like cultural Catholicism or whatever. But it was pure fear. I know that, like, what I was raised in was pure fear. But it was this group that just really was loving and really watched out for each other. And they really were like, you can do it. You can get back into the movie. You can handle some scary movies. And they actually like held my hand and they got me through Poltergeist because they knew I would love it. And they're right. I did love that movie. And they told me when the scary parts were. They told me when I hide my face and stuff. And I did. I think they knew I loved movies. They knew I'd get through it. But they also got me to Silence of the Lambs. And I think that's one of my all-time favorite movies. It has Jodie Foster in it. And it has, oh gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. Hold on. And Anthony Hopkins. And I just love both of them. And they're just phenomenal. So it is a suspense movie. That's our suspense movie. It is suspenseful. It is phenomenal acting. It is suspenseful. It's not going to be a horror flick if you're not ready for horror. It's just tense. It's just intense. It's psychological. If you like psychology and things like that, if you like Law and Order Criminal Intent, you're going to love this movie. I always loved Criminal Intent, so I think they knew that I would love this movie, and I did. It is It's a classic. And you'll see how much it's referenced in culture. Like I suddenly, when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, that explains like all these things I saw, like fava beans and all these things I had seen in culture for so long. So it's essential to see and to know. It's also a sign of how far Hollywood had come. I mean, I don't think they even thought about it. The fact that they had a female in the FBI, a female and a male, they were so equal. And it was made in 91. And at that time, it really shows you before the 1992 campaign got going, when they really started using like funding from the Hasidic Jewish community and the Islamic Jewish community, two communities that feel that women are worth less than a man. And you really saw women in film change after that. The women in film really... there was a huge shift in how women were portrayed in film after that time. And this film captures exactly, like, you'll see there was just no difference. We were so equal. It captures how Western culture, none of us even thought about it, I think, at the time. I think it was just, there was no acknowledgement of like, oh, woman versus man at all. Her acting was so, and also I remember correctly, like Jodie Foster Jodie Foster is gay, and it was not a question at all. She came out long after, and it wasn't a thing in the movie when it was promoted and everything like that. It was never talked about. Like, it is just, like I said, back before 92, that was their personal life. Like, we kept personal lives personal, and she wanted that. I think all of us want that. We valued personal privacy. Like, it is a thing of this politics of pushing our lives out into this surveillance thing of making things like 1984, where they're taking our private lives and shoving them out into the public. Like they say, transparency, but we didn't ask for that. We wanted our private lives kept public. So this is a beautiful picture, beautifully well done, excellent psychological thriller, masterfully filmed, masterfully directed in every way, and perfect for Halloween. So, and then finally, so that was 1991. And then finally, The Omen, the bane of my existence, the thing that got me off of scary movies for my entire life until, Silence of the Lambs and Poltergeist. But even after that, like, I wouldn't watch anything outside of my group of friends. Like, that group of friends, I was like, okay, I can handle it if I have to. You can help me through it. But I mean, I just like now, I have a group of friends now. When October comes around, they sit me through it. I get through it. I hold on to everyone we hold in and sing Kumbaya, and I get through the movies. Do you know what I'm saying? But The Omen scarred me. Like, do not watch it with kids, and especially if you're raising them Catholic or something like that, or if you're raising them in a home that emphasizes religion in any way. And I mean, that means Luciferian on. Like, it's not, no, like, just don't. And I would say even not, because I do think from the things that I have seen, I've seen enough to know that this stuff is based in reality. Like, The Omen's based in reality. That is why it did so well. It has Gregory Peck in it. It's directed by Richard Donner. And it's so funny because he directed the film that kind of like injured me for my whole life. And then he directed the film that is probably one of my favorite films and brought light to my life forever. So he directed The Omen, which is like the darkest film of my life. And then he directed Superman. The original Superman was Christopher Reeve, which was just like light. Both of them are genius directing. And I said that in my intro. I said, like, I can still write out for you all the scenes in The Omen, even though I saw it as this little girl. And The Omen had been out forever when I saw it. I don't know why they showed it. Well, because it's classic. Everyone watches it. They even redid it, and it's nothing like what the original is the one. And I think because it's based in reality and stuff like that, that it comes out like crap like that happens. And maybe they make so much now that it may just be, it may not be that scary anymore. But back then they weren't making stuff like that all the time. It was a real shock on the culture because nothing like that was being made. But it is basically about a young boy that was born into this, not born into, they adopted a young boy, and it was a wealthy family, basically like the epitome of like Western culture, whatever, wealthy family. Went to church back then. Everyone went to church or whatever, but they went to a Catholic church and they adopted a boy. And then at age 5, strange things start happening, right? And all these people start giving homage to this young boy. So what really got me was like this photographer would take pictures of people, and then these people would die. And when he'd, develop photographs, the photographs would have these shadows through. And it's the shadows that got me as a kid. And they had to take me home in the middle of it. I don't know why. It was like, my family didn't let me see. And they were so, we're talking not a normal childhood at all for me. I was thinking about it. Like, besides all the abuse that they put me through, they also, like, I was not allowed to listen to music. There was no music growing up, and there was no TV growing up, like 1/2 hour episode a day, I think. But other than that, that was it. Like, no other TV whatsoever. I wasn't allowed to listen to music, no cultural music, no TV. Can you imagine that? No music for me? Like, I don't know how I survived as a kid. I think I was allowed to take like dance classes. Like, I took like Polynesian dance, things like that, and gymnastics, which thank goodness, so, but that was few and far between. So, and if I did any of it, I had to practice, but that's it. That's really, really hard. So, I don't know. It's just it's a really amazing movie. It was back to the movie. It's a phenomenal movie, directed phenomenally. We were watching the trailer and I was like, yep, every single scene is exactly the way I remember it. And to remember that as a young child, to remember that at such a young age, I was like 5, 6, or 7. And I remember every single scene. That is excellent directing. His vision was so, so sharp. And his use of color is so perfect. His use of angle was so perfect to give people power and to minimize people and to expand people and to put people down low versus up high. And to give this little child and to give it the terror that was necessary. He gave it a sense of reality. And for me as a young child, realities that I had already felt, maybe that I felt in the Catholic Church or whatever, I felt like it really just mirrored reality that I had already experienced in real life, even as a young child. That's very hard to do. That's very, very hard to do as a director. That's your job as a director, is to play that fine line between reality and fiction and fantasy. You want to feel like you're there and feel like you're not there at the same time. And he did that. And he did that with Superman too. You felt like you were there. You felt like at any time he could walk into your life and save you. That's a very difficult thing to do. And it was a huge success. And I think it was like one of his first films. And because it was so big, he was able to direct Superman. So, congrats to him. I really feel like it was, the only reason I saw it is because I went to a party and the whole party was filling out lyrics that, was some popular song. And I didn't know it because I wasn't allowed to listen to any popular music. I wasn't allowed to listen to the radio. And so they stuck me in a back room watching the Omen. They actually stuck the Omen on. And so I was back there and alone watching the Omen. And I'm like, are you kidding? Yeah, I ended up, back home the first night out of the house. That was not a good thing. Not smart. Not smart. What are you doing? Putting a little kid like that without any supervision. Stupid. So don't do that to kids. Or maybe I was just really sensitive. I don't know. But it is not a children's movie. And that goes for everything that's marked like for underage children. I have family members that are sticking their kids on video games that are marked that say don't put kids on like World of Warcraft. And I'm watching those kids have nightmares now. Like, those kids are having nightmares because it's not meant for them at that young age. They're not sleeping well, they're isolated, they're not integrating well with their classrooms and things like that. Kids have huge imaginations. Kids are still, their minds are still developing. They have massive imaginations. Your mind is like limited. What's real, what's not. Kids aren't. They have this huge imagination. My hat keeps hitting back here. Sorry. So, you don't want to put them in a world of fantasy that's negative like that. You want to give them boundaries. Like, the boundaries you want to give them is something like, I would say, like Walt Disney's, like Fantasia. It has a little bit mirrored by all of this positive, and then it's vanquished. You know what I mean? But the Omen is just all, and like Deliverance and stuff like that. It's meant to scare you. You don't want to put things that for young children, we think they can handle so much, but that's right. Young kids can handle a lot of trauma. The kids could handle it in concentration camps. They handle trauma really well. Just because you're like, I see parents all the time. They're like, I see grandparents are like, man, they handle it so well. I'm like, yeah, kids are great at handling trauma. They get really quiet. Traumatized kids are amazing. They are traumatized kids. They're so quiet and they're so good. Yeah, that's trauma. They can be so well behaved and so quiet. That's trauma. So just kind of leave, stick the family stuff for the kids. Family is for family. So, anyway, so The Omen is a phenomenal movie, though. It is a phenomenal movie for ages 14 and up, or whatever it's marked for, you know what I mean. So, just genius movie making and genius. Genius. He is a genius. And yeah, they can't duplicate it. That's very hard to do. So as far as American cinema goes, and I would say it's the closest we're going to get to being on the lines of the occult. Like, it's the closest we're going to get to being on the lines of that. So, but it is, I'm allowing it in because, number one, it's so important to know about. But number two, it's not like teaching like how to practice it. It is being aware that it exists. I have always taught the importance. I've always said this, like from when I talked about source, there is this like need in society to be like, oh, bad people don't exist in order for the networks to thrive. Like, it's like, oh, bad people don't exist. No one will ever lie to you or hurt you. Deny. That's not true. Bad things exist. Bad things exist. Evil exists in this world. I'm not going to go around and deny that. And that's that. The Omen fully admits that it exists. And I think in a very true way. And so I think that that's part of its genius. That's why it did so well. That's why it's still scary. And that's why people still love it. Like things like Freddy Krueger or something like that. That's not real. You know what I mean? Things like don't really exist. You know what I mean? Like, that's fantasy. So that's something to keep in mind. So anyway, so those are the 4 movies that we have. You guys are going to really enjoy it. You don't have to watch all of them, just what you want. The bottom line is to know that they exist. So we have Fantasia, The Blob. We have such a range. Fantasia, The Blob, Silence of the Lambs, and The Omen. Be at least aware of them if you're going to work in the Hollywood industry. And make sure you keep the lights on if you get skittish or scared. And if you are kind of skittish and scared of movies and stuff like that, have the lights on and have someone to hold your hand, or just don't do it. And if you're not, if you can handle whatever, turn off all the lights and get down. And some of these movies might not scare you at all. I know that we live in a kind of horror movie culture, and these movies might be blah to you. But if you want to work in Hollywood, you're going to have to know them. You're going to have to know them and study why they were big at the time. because movies today aren't big because they're being made by China. They're being made by China to fit into a socialist society. So you want to learn what is good. You want to learn what's good because when it comes to success, it's going to change. In the future, things are going to change. At the bottom line, you're going to have to know how to make something that's good. In the end, the only way to make it today, you're going to have to know how to work a movie. You're going to have the skills, and you're not going to learn that unless you study these movies. Does that make sense? So I hope that helps you out. I hope you guys have a fun time. I hope you enjoyed some of the classic thing, all vintage that I got at the vintage stores when I walked this last August. I need to walk again. The injection's coming up this month. I can't wait to walk again. I miss it. I miss it terribly. And so I'm looking forward to that. So we will do it again. So it's exciting. I love you all. Happy Halloween, happy October, and happy season 2. I will see you guys next time. Bye. Mwah. Au revoir. And watch these 2 movies. And please give a donation below if you guys could donate. You can set the donation. It starts at 0. So anything you want to donate, like 0, 25 cents, $25, $50, you can even donate $100. Whatever you guys want to donate, you know, it all helps out tremendously. It all goes towards my medical bills because I have a freaking ton of the medical bills. So if you could help out, so that would be really, really great. It really makes a difference. I know I don't have any sponsors for this channel. Are you kidding me? I talk about Sharia law. Are you crazy? All right. I love you guys. Bye.